All right, here we go. I hope you're ready. Here's for part two, stress and its impact on physiology and the adaptive response that follows. So in this, there's a lot of material, and we're going to talk about once once you are stressed, how does your physiology respond to that? There's an acute response, and we'll talk about the stress hormones, and then what happens over time with chronic stress. How does that impact you? And then what symptoms are you going to start to notice? So, stress, whenever we perceive stress, whether that's thoughts, toxins, or some kind of trauma, it increases cortisol and aldosterone production via the adrenal glands. This can lead to fluid retention, increased blood pressure, low thyroid hormones, decreased sex hormone production, fatigue, cramping, ineffective muscle contractions, irregular heartbeat, blood sugar shift, decreased metabolism and weight gain, and decreased immune system function. I put these symptoms in here on the first slide so that you'll hang with me, because we're going to get into even more detail of symptoms that people may notice. But a lot of people may identify immediately with some of these symptoms. Cortisol, which is produced by the middle layer of the adrenal gland, this releases glucose in the blood for energy. Whenever there is an immediate response, we need to get away from it. So our physiology and our brain evolution does not know the difference between me being stressed because I can't find a restaurant that doesn't have seed oils and me being stressed because I can't just find food. So it's going to have the same stress response. It doesn't know the difference between me being stressed because I have a difficult work deadline or me being stressed because a neighboring tribe is trying to take over my tribe. It's going to respond the same. And in doing so, it needs energy. We need energy. So what happens is cortisol is produced, glucose is released from your muscles. It's lowering inflammation, and it's going to impact the immune response because I got to go. I can't be focused on being sick. I need to get rid of it. I can't be focused on my joints hurting. I got to get rid of that. Immediate effect of cortisol. Okay. And then there's aldosterone, which is produced in the outer layer of the adrenal glands whenever we have a perceived threat. Its main role is to impact fluid and electrolyte function. It tells the kidneys to retain fluid, hold on to sodium, and let go of potassium. So this is where fluid imbalance starts to get out of control if left unchecked, as well as this can impact your heart rate and your heartbeat and your ability to recover. This is a book that is referenced a lot in functional medicine, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. In the wild, whenever an animal is being chased, or if a lion is trying to chase something, there's an immediate stress response, immediate cortisol response, and this will rise cortisol, cause all those effects that I just talked about. But as soon as a zebra is out of threat, it goes back to baseline. The problem is, nowadays, for most people, we don't have just an acute stress response. Oh my gosh, I just almost got hit by a car trying to cross the road, but now I'm fine. Because a lot of cases, oh my gosh, we just almost got hit by a car. Then we think about it all day, or then we get to work and now we're stressed at work, and we start to deal with chronic stress. This talks about a critical point in the book where the physiological response in animals does go down, but a lot of cases in humans, we are chronically stressed. We have a chronic physiological response. And like I mentioned before, your body doesn't know the difference of I'm being chased by a lion that's trying to kill me and eat me, and I have a difficult work deadline, or I haven't slept well because my toddler or my baby's up all night. Your body's still going to have the same stress response. Acute stress is adaptive. It's a self-protective, self-preserving physiological response. Chronic stress, via thoughts, traumas, and toxins, leave your system in that chronic stress state, which overall has a huge impact on your health. And that's what we're going to get into a little bit more of. It puts your brain under the chronic attack. So your adrenal glands are constantly pumping out more and more cortisol and aldosterone. This signal to the brain will downregulate your thyroid hormone because your body doesn't care about your metabolism. It doesn't care in that moment about you having a clear mind to be able to have abstract thought. It's going to cause you to be more foggy-headed and focus on one thing in front of you. So it's going to impact the whole system. And if we can understand that the stress response is meant for survival, we can understand what survival might look like. And then what happens when we live in constant survival, everything else that our system is going to prioritize less will start to suffer. So a lot of people, like I mentioned before, have been stressed chronically. And they're talking like 10 to 20 years. And the question you get is, well, does your body just keep producing cortisol and aldosterone in these amounts? No. Eventually, the HPA axis will start to downregulate. It starts to preserve. So basically, it's getting input from your brain that there's a stressor. Something's happening. We're not handling it well because I've been being chased by a lion for 10 years now, or I've been hungry and not been able to find my next meal for 10 years now. So I got to start slowing things down. And then when it starts to do this, we start to see a flat line in the cortisol response. And there are other issues that come because of this. Whenever this happens, this leads to symptoms that's usually the alarm system for a lot of people. You start to get foggy-headed, lower energy, headaches, weight gain, blood pressure dysregulation, upset stomach, infertility, low libido, chronic inflammation. These are the symptoms that we hear about as practitioners the most, and that's an indicator that something is going on with our system that's causing a downregulation of what would normally be your healthy physiology. So we know that you're not in a parasympathetic state, because if you're in a parasympathetic state, your HRV is going to be perfectly fine. So your blood pressure and your heart rate are going to be better regulated. Your glucose and your insulin sensitivity are going to be doing fine. So your weight gain will not be happening rapidly. You'll be able to put on muscle mass when you exercise. You won't have as much inflammation. So when we see these symptoms, we know that's an indicator that something is going on with our physiology. Then what? It starts to impact other systems as well. This is where we're going to get into a little bit more of the meat, okay? So hang with me. Cholesterol, that is actually the substrate for cortisol and aldosterone. It's a substrate for all of our sex hormones as well. But your body is prioritizing survival, so it's not going to prioritize production of your sex hormones, your testosterone, DHEA, and progesterone, and then thyroid hormone also, as well as your estrogen. That doesn't mean that because your cholesterol is increasing because of stress that you're just going to have more substrate. Your cholesterol will go up, but that doesn't mean you're going to be able to have more there to produce sex hormones. Therefore, testosterone, which is a mood stabilizer and helps with muscle maintenance, estrogen, which in healthy amounts improve insulin sensitivity, as well as progesterone, which is a mild diuretic. It helps with digestion and it helps with sleep and a calming effect. Those all continue to decrease. This is an example, or this is not an example, this is the steroid pathway chart. I highlighted up the top cholesterol because cholesterol is the precursor for all of our sex hormones. Okay, so when we have stress or cortisol increasing, the need for cortisol increasing, that cholesterol, which should go down to progesterone and then over to DHEA and testosterone, it's taken away and it's going straight via a different pathway to cortisol to produce more and more and more. But, hey doc, now that the HPA axis is downregulated, we're producing less of this stress hormone. Shouldn't the symptoms start to be going away in our body to regulate? Because we're downregulating, right? I'm sorry, no, that's not how it works. So once you've crossed over into a flatline cortisol response, your physiology is still dysregulated. Insulin, so remember with cortisol, glucose is being pumped out. Insulin is actually that hormone that takes that glucose and gives it a job. But insulin, due to all this cortisol that's been pumping and glucose that's been coming out, it's going to actually increase fat storage into visceral fat, and that's a survival mechanism. So we see an increase in visceral fat, we see an increase in insulin and insulin resistance. So this is causing a metabolic signaling that takes a hit. And then even with less cortisol circulating, your brain is still in that survival mode. And then you'll have lower DHEA and testosterone, which will cause wasting of your muscles, further lowering the metabolic rate. Muscle mass is huge when it comes to dictating how much energy you burn at rest. So your resting metabolic rate is dictated a lot by your muscle mass. And then that's going to cause a more and more snowball effect of increasing in visceral fat. And also a huge piece, the liver, which has been stressed because it's been producing more and more glucose to meet the cortisol demand of stress. It's now slowing down, which impacts your detoxification, impact on bowel movements. Your liver, one of its main job is to convert sex hormones. So it's going to be worsening that response even more, lowering your sex hormone production. It's going to be increasing your inflammation and contributing even more to fat storage. All because this cortisol response was go, go, go for so many years. Now your HPA axis, now your body has decided to downregulate. But with that downregulation, you may think like, oh, I have less cortisol, but all the impact on your physiology has already occurred, taking a hit on your sex hormone, your insulin in your liver, as well as your digestion. Estrogen in healthy amounts, like I mentioned before, helps support insulin sensitivity. So estrogen is huge for metabolism and your body's ability to handle sugar, but now it's decreased. And that leads to the snowball effect of more blood sugar dysregulation. And it doesn't mean you're all of a sudden going to just stop craving sugar or stop craving salt, because now we have a fluid imbalance as well. So this is going to lead to more and more weight gain and fluid retention. Like I mentioned before, cortisol in its acute phase sharpens the immune system, cell functioning. Now that your cortisol is downregulated because of chronic stress, this is going to decrease your body's ability to fight off pathogens or heal injuries. So your immune response takes a hit, and you're going to get sick more often. I see this actually, I would say I saw this a lot when I was younger. You know those people that you're looking back, they were probably pretty stressed, but they never got sick. And then all of a sudden, they crossed over into like 20s or 30s and they are always sick. Or they had some kind of something that wiped them out so bad because their immune system had been heightened for so long because of a stress response, and then your immune system said, nah, we're done. And then they got a huge infection of some kind, or they got really sick. Digestion and the gut barrier is impacted. The immune system and the gut are very, very much tied together, and this will lead to slower rate of elimination, which can lead to more bacterial overgrowth, poor pH balance, and then also mess with the gut lining, leading to more leaky gut, and which will also lead to more inflammation and nutrient malabsorption. This is a huge note for postmenopausal females. You guys get your own slide, because I talk to postmenopausal females all the time. And the main thing I hear is, well, we know we're not going to be making hormones anymore, but now I have low libido. I've been just gaining weight. Honestly, that's the thing I hear the most, is the chronic weight gain. So your ovaries are responsible for making these sex hormones early on. If you don't know anything about that, it would be really helpful. I made a video that talks about the female cycle and how our ovaries produce hormones, then how ovulation is so important, healthy ovulation is so important for progesterone, and that balances out estrogen as well as testosterone. But if your sex organs aren't working, which they don't anymore postmenopausally, your production is supposed to go on to your adrenal glands. And your adrenal glands would create DHEA, pregnenolone, which is a precursor for progesterone, and then convert to testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone. But your adrenals have now been downregulated because of chronic stress. So you're postmenopausal, you didn't handle stress well, or you weren't ever educated, or no one helped you manage your adrenal health and your stress and your thyroid well in your 20s and 30s and 40s. And now this chronic stress is taking away even more so from your ability to produce any bit of these hormones. So this will lead to more dysregulation, Therefore, if you've never managed stress before, it's going to impact you even more, digging you into an even more of a hole that's hard to get out of. Now, that was a pretty decently long video. In part 3, I'm going to go over specifically what labs can indicate that stress is driving your symptoms. And then can you see it on routine, yearly, thing that your just primary care physician runs every year? Can you see stress on that? And then I'm going to go into some of the more specific functional lab markers that insurance often doesn't cover, but that we look at that can indicate that there is stress in the system.